Hi guys, thanks so much for watching Speaking of, and this is another one of our Founders Mission Stories. I'm Stephanie and I'm so excited, truly very, very excited to welcome Shawn Jenkins, who is a software founder, leader in the community, dad, farmer, all the things. And I'm just so excited because I actually worked for Shawn at Benefitfocus, and it's not often that you get to work at a company and then spend an hour talking to the founder. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm super excited to be with you today. And I just love the show and the energy that you're bringing, and you're producing a lot of great content. So thank you for including me.
Thank you. I couldn't have done it without Benefitfocus. So many of the people that I've had on came to me through Benefitfocus one way or another.
Yeah, it's really amazing when you spend your career, you think of your career as sort of what you're doing and you're building and you're going to the next step. And in my case, that involved starting a software company, and then you kind of look back, and it was really just a series of people circles that you were in, and those people, most of them, some way or another, stay involved or pop back up later in your life. And I wish I knew that earlier on, but I'm super fortunate to have just so many great friends from the work that we did at Benefitfocus and things that you and I are doing even after working there.
It is funny how you just don't really realize how everything's connected. And then you look back and you're like, holy cow, it's like a spider web of your life making sense.
Yeah, it's interesting too, to me, what people kind of, who keeps up with you after, whether you're still working at your company and they go on somewhere else, or you're not working at that company any longer and they end up somewhere else. And I've been fascinated. I think LinkedIn is so good at keeping us connected to each other in a different way than Facebook, obviously. And people just get excited for you and new ventures. Like, I'm super excited for you and what you're doing here. And that's been a joy to not only have a lot of friends that I worked with through some tremendous joint success, but also to see those friendships stay intact, but even grow in a lot of ways with new ventures. So super, super thankful for that.
That actually is a perfect segue into, you have a new venture called 3Together. Tell us about that.
I'm sure we'll talk about Benefitfocus and starting that company, but after doing that for over 20 years, getting the idea, getting that company started, and then leading it for 18 years as the CEO, I decided to take a couple of years off. And my wife and I were on one of our anniversary trips, and we were just walking down the street, and I said, I think I'm just gonna call it. This is, I've done what I came to do here, and I'd love to just have time to be with my wife and my kids and sort of explore some other non-technical areas of things we wanted to do. So we took a couple of years off. That was 2018, 2019. As we came into 2020, we didn't really have plans to start another business. Things were going great. We were enjoying just time with our kids and doing some things in the community. And of course, the coronavirus comes through and the pandemic. And for whatever reason, that made me kind of want to work. I don't know, maybe it was the hopeless nature of the whole pandemic, and you can't control any of it. Maybe it stirred in something in me to kind of get back to work. So I worked on my blog some, started a little podcast as an experiment. And the more I started talking to software people again, particularly founders and folks running young software companies, I got that same feeling I had when I wanted to start Benefitfocus over 20 years ago. So I reached out to a couple of friends, Jessica Brewer, who is a great leader that I worked with at Benefitfocus, and Greg Mon, who was our second associate hire at Benefitfocus 20 years ago. And I said, you guys, they were both had kind of taken some time off themselves and were doing a few different things. I said, I want to build software again. I want to be part of a software team. I don't care so much about building a company, but I want to build software and work on it. And I have such respect for you all. So we got together, the three of us, and formed a company virtually, using email and Zoom calls and whatnot, and created this company called 3Together. And we're working on our first software application right now. It's incredibly exciting and thrilling to be back, into my trade, which is software ideas, engineering, and just thinking about how you can introduce something and put it into the world and make the world a better place and help people. So just getting started on this one. Don't even have a product yet, zero revenue, and 3 of us working there, but hopefully it'll be fun, and hopefully I'll be able to come back on your show and give you some updates in the future.
I think it will. I loved that I looked at the website for 3Together, and I loved how it had your code name for the project and everything, which is funny because that's not usually something that people share. But I thought it was just neat how you really went through and shared the whole process of how you guys are thinking through and why you're doing everything. And you're focusing on micro-saas products, right?
Yeah, so there's a tremendous energy in the technical space or technology softwares, and there's this, I guess there's so many tools now, and it's so easy to build software, at least initially, that a lot of people part-time while they're working other jobs are starting these software businesses on the side. And some people refer to that as micro-saas or indie SaaS, like independent movies, indie movie. So independent software or micro-SaaS is where you're not really going down the traditional venture capital route. We're at 3Together, we're a self-funded company. And there's a lot of like open sharing about how people's businesses are doing, how they're finding sales to work. And it's just a generous community. And I wanted to dive into that end of it without the big pressure of raising capital or having a big board or whatnot. And so we are building our first application, which we are only going to take a couple months and build it and put it out in the world and see how she goes. We may add to that and build more onto that product depending on the market reaction. We may decide to do a second or even a third micro-SaaS application, and we hope to see kind of like a portfolio of these smaller SaaS programs get into the market, and eventually we hope that 1 or 2 of them goes on and gets larger, and then we'd invest more money into that. So it's really, the heart of it is engineering. Like the 3 of us have a product and engineering background. I say we're 2.5 engineers. Greg and Jessica, terrific engineers. I'm about half of an engineer from my old skills, but our next 2 hires will be engineers. So we're a product and engineering company, and building things that we love.
And so what was it? What is this? How does this compare whenever you were first starting Benefitfocus to now starting 3Together? Because it's a very different time in the world, but still a lot of uncertainty when you started that during the .com bubble and starting this during a pandemic. It's kind of a theme of yours.
Yeah, as that kind of software desire welled up in me over the last 6 or 7 months, and particularly through the pandemic, I was like thinking about what was Shawn doing 20 years ago, even before that, when I had the idea for Benefitfocus, and then we had the .com crash, and we started Benefitfocus June of 2000, and the NASDAQ crashed in March. So 3 months after that crash, no more venture capital, all the .coms were going to be gone, was sort of the theory. And then we had 9/11 and the recession that followed that the following year. So something about difficult economic times that like wakes me up and gets me going, and maybe it's trying to counterbalance whatever angst that the world is throwing at all of us. The obvious differences are now that I can afford to do this in a different way, not in a more expensive way, just because I can afford to put some of my own money in it at this time. But I don't have the just immense cash flow pressure that I had when we started Benefitfocus. My initial investment in the company, I borrowed. I went to a high credit, high expense or high interest rate loan place that you see in these shopping centers, and borrowed money. And that was my contribution that I put into Benefitfocus. It's not the way I would recommend doing it. It was the rare one that worked out. And getting that company going, I mean, it took a lot of resource. We bootstrapped it. We didn't have traditional venture capital for a long while, till about 7 years in. And it became immensely successful. But that's probably the biggest difference now. And I'm I guess the similarities, I'm starting it with friends. I started Benefitfocus with friends, that people that I knew and trusted and respected. And I wouldn't be doing this again if I didn't have a team of people that I really wanted to be part of and knew could be super successful. So in some sense, there's a lot of similarity, probably more similarity than difference. Both were in Charleston again. Back then, Charleston barely had the internet. Literally, companies we would try and sell to didn't have the internet. And of course, now Charleston's a great technology hub and a lot of great things happening here.
How old were you when you started Benefitfocus?
Oh, 30, 31, something like that. And I had the idea for Benefitfocus 5 years prior. So in 1995, I literally woke up from going to sleep, and I had this like burning idea, and I got my notebook and wrote out 8 pages of notes about creating a web-based electronic enrollment system to take the paper forms out of benefits administration. I had been doing some benefits administration in the retirement sector with my now partner, Mason Holland, and he was kind of teaching me about 401ks, and I was going out and visiting employers like grocery stores and so forth, and doing 401k enrollment meetings and filling out paper forms and bringing them back to the office and typing them in. And I was like, man, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't do this for 6 more months. But we got to create a way. And I guess it was that pressure combined with kind of a medical situation that my daughter was having, and some fear over paying for medical bills, and the uncertainty of my very young daughter and the needs she had. Yeah, that stuff pressurizes your brain, and out came this like idea on paper that took me 5 years from that point to actually start the company. But that was the sort of the backdrop, and how that idea came, and then how that business got started.
What happened in those 5 years? What took the 5 years?
I wandered. I always wanted to own a business from as young as I could remember, and I always wanted to own an airplane. I wanted to be a pilot. And so after aviation school, I went to school and became a pilot, commercial pilot, but I didn't really want to do that for a career. I came to Charleston. I worked at nonprofit for a while. I worked for Mason, kind of on a contract basis in the pension administration. But I did a few years between that, that original idea. I've sold cars, I sold copiers, I sold computers, retail, because I wanted to get some sales experience. And I thought if I ever was going to own a business, I needed to know how to sell things. And I thought, well, I'll either learn how to sell things and that will be good, or I'll learn that I can't sell things and I'll have to learn how to hire salespeople or sales leadership, and a bit of both. I went to work at Rockwell. I wanted to see if I could write software for a living. I self-taught in the software space, and I actually got a job as a software programmer analyst, I think was my title, in Greenville, South Carolina. So I had like a series of things that I needed to teach myself or learn, and also I think sort of prove out. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with like both believing you can do something, but then having a pretty decent amount of, or maybe lack of confidence until you actually do it. And so those 5 years, I carried that idea around with me sort of everywhere I went. And I just did a series of jobs building up to getting back into the benefits arena. Came back, worked with Mason again. And then as our work together had a lot of success, we gave birth to this new idea, Benefitfocus.
It's interesting that hearing you talk about your own story and how you came to found Benefitfocus, and then just working with you over the years and now knowing what you do now. It seems like a lot of times when you come up with these things, you do have your own sort of education. You obviously have a formal education, you have an MBA, but it seems like you go out and you create your own curriculum for these things, what you need in your own head, and it's, I don't know, like in my head, it's kind of like you going out into the woods, thinking in some kind of cabin, or tree stand, and then coming back
Right.
like, okay, I've absorbed all of these things that I need to take them to the next level. Do you feel like you do have these boxes for yourself that you have to check like that, or like what gets to that kind of feeling for you?
Yeah, I'd say younger in my career, it was out of yeah, I didn't want to get into some sort of job or career or business or, really anything formal and end up being like not knowing what I was doing and sort of getting embarrassed. And I don't know if it comes from growing up with a single mom household and we worried a lot about money and how to keep things going in our home. And there's just a lot of fear and anxiety around just how to hold things together. And so I'm sure a fair amount of that brought into my career. And I thought, okay, so the next step is whatever. I'm going to learn to write software. So I got to do all the work I can, do all the studying I can, and then get a job, and then perform exceptionally well at that job. And then once I had that, I need to learn how to sell. And so I'm going to go into this sales career. I specifically set 2 years aside to learn how to sell. And I wanted to do 100% commission jobs. I wanted to do at least 3 jobs. And I thought 2 years of this will either really teach me a lot about myself and selling, or it'll be a complete disaster and we'll lose our house. So I do tend to take a pretty drastic, now that you say that, approach to learning things. I do enjoy learning them, but to be honest, most of the learning I've done is some fear might be too strong of a word, but some sort of, I want to erase as much uncertainty as I can so that when I get to the future and I'm in this role, I will have some ability to operate it.
That's really great. I love hearing about your process for that. It just seems so unique. I can't imagine that most people are doing that off on their own, creating their own program, and then, okay, now I'm ready. I've proved this to myself. I can put this out there. So once you felt like you got to that point, what happened when you started saying like, okay, I have this 8-page plan. I've been working on it for 5 years. I've proven this to myself. Now we have to go do this. What did people say when you said you wanted to form this company at a volatile time and totally change the way that benefits were going?
Interestingly enough, even though we started after the dot-com bust, we were thinking about the idea during the dot-com buildup. And so in a sense, we were just late to the dance. And it was risky to, as the knife was falling on the economy and particularly the internet economy, to jump into that arena. But we had experience with these 401k plans, and we had customers that we administered their benefits, did enrollment, and we had talked to enough business owners and HR people to know that they thought the way benefits were administered sucked, right? You get all this paper and the insurance is sending the wrong bill, and there's more than one company that has to be communicated with, and payroll doesn't link. So it wasn't a huge entrepreneurial leap to go, all right, there's a lot of room for improvement. Now, as we got more serious and closer to actually starting a company, I started finding all these businesses on the internet that had already started a couple of years before us. And I had a list at one time, Stephanie, that was 200 names long. I gave up when I got to 200. A lot of insurance brokers said, web enrollment or internet enrollment. There were some pretty substantial West Coast companies that got funded $25 million, $50 million, $75 million to build these types of platforms. And that intimidated me, but more than anything, it kind of proved that we were going to go into a market that was validated. And I felt like, the West Coast strategy of just throw a lot of money at it with how hard benefits were and what we knew about the complexity of data exchange, I felt like some of those companies probably wouldn't make it. Of course, they didn't. The dot-com crash, in a sense, cleared out a lot of competition while we had to be frugal, and we started small and we funded the company ourselves. And through that just real discipline of building, our first hires were engineers, and we were building a product, and we were just, I'd go out and sell it myself, and I had one person that was helping me with that. And we had some great breaks along the way. I mean, there's no doubt that divine intervention and just wonderful people and an incredible smart team of people that formed at the company early on gave us just a terrific run.
You have, I think, a dogged determination to just go against the grain for whatever it is. And so to me, again, just working with you, I feel like having the obstacles come at you probably motivated you more. Like you said, you're thriving in the pandemic. You're trying to get this going again. And so I love the stories that you share about, dealing with people who don't have any internet, which is obviously an obstacle to a web-based enrollment system. So you guys have a million stories of going out there with kiosks. What was that like, trying to just really change how everything was happening through whatever method you had to? I mean, what was like the furthest that you had to go to make this happen, to pull off a sale or to pull off an enrollment?
Yeah, so it was 2000 when we started the company, and that first year, I'd never built software before, but I had 1 year as a program analyst, but never actually built my own software with a team. I'd never sold software before. Benefits quickly became health insurance benefits were the primary benefit that we learned, even though I had somewhat of a retirement experience. And I didn't know anything about health insurance. I didn't know the terms. I didn't know the actuarial models. I didn't understand how they enrolled or how they sold or the commission structure. And so I just went into this blind machine that ground me up and our team. And it was like this incredible, I'd have moments of incredible clarity and belief and faith and a sense of destiny that this is gonna just be awesome. And those would be followed by just a series of complete abject, the bottom's falling out, we're never gonna make it. There's competitors, there's people don't really want this, the economy's crashing, we're gonna run out of money. So, there's just, depending on the day and the time, it was somewhat of a horrendous emotional ride, yet it was thrilling at the same time. I clearly thought the whole way through that this would be the only time I would do this. This was one company, one software company, all the way through. I don't know how people do this multiple times. I never understood the multiple entrepreneurship people, because I'm like, this is rough, man, and you could die, you could blow your leg off here. Some of the setbacks, if you will, or times we would get stopped. One you kind of alluded to, I was out selling our software, and we're based in South Carolina, and I was out in a kind of a rural area visiting a couple grocery store chains, and we had a large grocery store chain, Piggly Wiggly, using the software as kind of a beta tester. They were good friends of ours, and they introduced us to a couple other regional Piggly Wiggly stores, and I had this one that had 4 stores that were out in a rural area. These stores were super old, the kind that when you walked in, they had those mirrors in the back of the store that at an angle in the roof, and that's their theft deterrent system. But just beautiful people, super down to earth. And I went and visited the owners and the people that did the payroll, and they were in this old converted Pizza Hut. And they painted it gray and covered all the windows. So imagine a 1970s Pizza Hut building painted gray with the windows covered on the side of a road in rural South Carolina. And I go in there, and there's filing cabinets everywhere and a big fax machine. And I sat down with this beautiful lady, owner of the company. Her and her husband owned it, and she was probably in her late 60s and at the time. And I said, well, I'm here, because of the other Piggly Wiggly stores said they're using this. And she was very polite and smiled. And I showed her on my computer the little software screens, our little baby product that we were developing. And I'm all, I got my tie on, my Brooks Brothers suit and whatnot. And she finished the demo, and I said, well, what do you think? Do you think this would help your business? And she just said, Shawn, and she touched my little arm, and she said, it's so nice for you to come out here and visit us, but we don't have the internet. And I thought, oh, whoa, okay. I got internet software, and you don't have the internet. and I don't, this probably goes back to divine inspiration. I had this like idea pop in my head. I said, we have a fax machine. I see a fax machine right there. And you have a computer because you're doing some stuff on a computer over here. I will come back next week and I will bring a modem. And I'm going to put it in your computer and I'm going to hook it up to your fax machine, put a little splitter on there. And I had this American Online account. This, remember AOL and those accounts. And in AOL, you could have up to 5 or 6 usernames on your one account. And so I created a Piggly Wiggly, whatever the name of their company was, a user on my AOL account. Came back, installed it, put the AOL software on her computer, and said, here, you now have the internet. And what it does is it uses your fax machine line to call up. And I would occasionally I'd be home at night and be checking my personal AOL email, and I couldn't get in because you could only have one of the users in it each time. And I would see them online, the Piggly Wiggly store, and I would just smile. So yeah, I mean, starting a company, you got to be very flexible. You got to be very nimble. And you got to just, people say fake it till you make it, but it really isn't so much faking it as it is just being industrious or creative or flexible, or, I had everything in my life into this company. So there was no going back or no accepting failure. So that's one good sales story.
That seems to be a theme too that I've seen from a lot of successful people, that there's just no plan B. It's this is happening, and if it doesn't, then we're all screwed.
Yeah, and if you keep doing that enough, of course, then on the opposite, good days come. And in our case, we had a good fortune of a BlueCross BlueShield health insurance plan here in South Carolina. And the Blue plans are state by state; they're individual companies for the most part. And the early customers, the first 6 or 8 customers that we were signing up, all had BlueCross BlueShield insurance. So we just called them and said, we need to send data out of this newfangled system we got here. And they're like, what are you talking about, man? Who are you guys? Get up here. We want to talk to you. And they weren't threatened because we were tiny, but they didn't want their customers being disrupted and somebody, being like an intermediary between them and their customer. And so they had a way of just sort of checking out market activity. And we went up and visited them just a couple months after we started. And I showed them the software and showed them how great it was going to be. And it was going to make their life better because they'd have accurate census information and their bills would be better and downstream claims effect would be better. And we weren't trying to sell them anything. We were selling it to the employer. Our business model was a B2B or business to business software as a service. Back then we called it application service provider, but a multi-tenant single instance software. It would just spit out, hopefully, clean data to these insurance companies in whatever format they needed. And in that first meeting, the head of their major group market area, just beautiful guy named Don Nystrom, he looked at me after the demo and he said, why don't we put the Blue Cross logo on that and we'll give it out to our customers. What do you charge for it? And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was the opposite of we don't have any internet, Shawn. It was the going into a meeting that you thought was just like some technical explanation and being handed literally hundreds and hundreds of customers. And of course, there were some bumps along the way with that. But we eventually got that to work and spent a first number of years really focusing on more of a private label for large insurance companies as they gave it to their customers. And that was tremendous, fortuitous event for our company. And our team was smart enough to capitalize on it and deliver for them. And then that spread across the country.
That is quite a story. That really is just the total opposite of what happened at Piggly Wiggly. It's just amazing how that goes up and down.